He has already earned his extremely large paycheck just this week at the NTC meetings, which you'll be finding out about later. So with that, Todd's mic'd up, ready to go. Welcome.
Well, good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to see a lot of very familiar faces. And let me jump into one of the most boring presentations I have ever had the pleasure of putting together. For those of you who are not familiar with the term death by PowerPoint, I am afraid that I might be doing that for you today, but this is some very important things to talk about. To the extent that I am going to go through this a little fast in some spaces, there's a lot to cover. So please make notes. There's going to be 3 periods where there's questions and answers. So please feel free to keep those notes, and then we'll talk briefly at the question and answer points. I'm going to talk about the Code of Ethics, social media guidelines that have just been added and adopted by the NTC, and then the disciplinary policy as it applies specifically to officials. So that's who I am. The language on the Code of Ethics and the various things is not authoritative. I have edited it down for presentation purposes, which you will be very thankful for because it's a little terse in areas. Here's the roadmap that we're going to be going through on the presentation. I'm going to discuss in that order, and each section is going to be followed by a Q&A section. Any place where there are bold, italics, or underline are for presentation purposes only. You will not find that in the original documents. So, kicking into it on the Code of Ethics. So the concept of a Code of Ethics is to give people a set of guidelines, rules, principles that they can operate by when they are faced with a situation where they don't have an exact rule that is going to tell them what to do. You will know when you are faced with something, it's like, oh yeah, the guidelines or the Code of Ethics are, I should not do this thing wrong. Don't do the wrong thing. And you won't ever see like that exact thing. So it's giving you some guidelines. The Code of Ethics was created by the USAC National Technical Commission. I'll refer to that as the TC or the NTC throughout the presentation. There is currently a Code of Ethics that is posted on the USAC website that has been updated this past several days, and an updated version will be posted hopefully in the not-too-distant future by the wonderful Mr. Mahoney. So I'm going to go through some bullet items here regarding the Code of Ethics. On the intro, what we are looking for are officials to act as impartial arbiters of bike races. We want them to perform accurately, fairly, and objectively, and always having that overriding sense of integrity. You are wearing one hat when you are out there as an official, and that is just the official's hat. You are not there as a race director. You are not there as a rider. You are not there as a loved one of someone who is riding. You are there as the official, and you are representing a whole lot of people, and there's a lot of expectations that you're going to act in these ways. It is vital that you approach each and every one of your assignments in a professional manner. Whether it's a time trial at a Category E race that has 50 riders in it, or whether it's the Tour of California. Prepare for each the same way and conduct yourself accordingly. Because of the authority and autonomy that officials have just by the very nature of the position, we must have a high degree of commitment and expertise in how we execute the job that we are doing out there. Just as I know there are many people in this room that I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, When you show up at a local race, there will be riders there that have no idea who you are, will have no idea that you are very committed to your craft, but they will be able to see it in how you conduct yourself and how you are presenting yourself, just as Steve was saying in our last presentation. This last bullet here, accepting responsibility for our actions, that's huge. Following up again on what Steve was saying in the last presentation on leadership, when you accept your responsibility for your actions at a race, it goes far and away above showing people that you have ethics when you say, I just made a mistake. Be willing to, if possible, reverse a decision that you are making as an official. Be willing to say, I've just made a mistake in some directions that I gave members of my crew. Always accept those responsibilities. So the code of ethics, the purpose of it, can basically be summarized in these two things. It's provide the meaningful set of guidelines for professional conduct, standards of practice, and two, to provide to others criteria by which they may judge us. And they will judge us. They will judge everything that you do as an official, from how you show up at the race, to how you conduct yourself during the race, and to how you are conducting yourself after the race. So this code of ethics are ways that we can always point to others as to, this is how we hold ourselves. Adoption of this code has been by the NTC. NTC wrote it and has adopted it. We expect ourselves as the NTC members to adhere by this code of ethics, and we are expecting that you will be doing the same also. The NTC has recognized the need to preserve and encourage confidence in the professionalism of bike racing, in the professionalism of officiating bike racing. And we need to foster that sense of professionalism throughout the entire corps of officials at USA Cycling. This is going to be a good thing for all of us in this room, as well as all of those who may be watching later. It will help us with USAC staff. It'll help us with riders. And the more professional we are in how we conduct ourselves while officiating, believe it or not, the easier the job gets because of the reaction that you will get from others. Jumping into the code, there are, I believe, 5 or 6 articles in the code. We'll go through them fairly quickly here. So officials must be free of obligation, and sorry I'm reading this. This is one of those things that you can read it on your own, obviously, but let me chat about it and put the emphasis in my words. Officials must be free of obligation to any interest other than the impartial and fair arbitration of cycling competitions. Without equivocation, any decision that is slanted by personal bias is dishonest and unacceptable. Now, those two things. All of you have been at races, and some of you may be that person or persons, where the chief ref is also the person who promoted the race. And they're really busy promoting the race and making sure that the drivers are in position and making sure that all the money's being collected and registration's going okay. And oh, by the way, who just went out with that field that just started? When you are there as an official, only wear the official's hat. Do not be there in another role. Do not be there as, oh yes, I'm also running the company that's going to be doing the results. And that's okay, because I'm going to be getting paid by them, and I'm going to be getting paid as the official, and I'm going to be the race director. Not a good situation. You have conflicts of interest. You may have to make a very hard decision as an official, that is going to be against your best interests as the race director or as the results company. Don't put yourself in that position. Officials shall maintain the basic tenets of officiating, which include the history of the sport, the history of the particular event, the history involved with the particular race director or folks that are at this event. Integrity, neutrality, respect. You want respect as an official? The wonderful photo that we saw in the last one with the guy with the shotgun there, I'm not sure who that was. But if you want respect from riders and team managers and race directors, give them respect. Respect them, and you are going to get that respect returned. Be sensitive to the needs of all of those that are around you, whether it's your own members of your crew, or it's the riders or the race directors or spectators. Or it's a person, the little old lady who's trying to get to church and has no idea that there's a bike race. Be sensitive. Be professional in how you are doing your job. Have discretion in abundance. There are many things that you will see and hear as a bike race official that you don't need to talk about to anybody else. Even though it's really juicy and tempting, don't do it. And be tactful in your interactions with others. So taking responsibility for your actions. Yesterday I had a little opportunity to be less than tactful, and I apologize to my fellow members of the TC. But I'm going to take acknowledgement for that because I got excited about something. Do the same thing when you're at a race. You get excited, you may go over the top on something. You can always back up and say, whoa, I didn't mean to do that, and that wasn't good. Don't try to make it be an okay thing. Article 2 of the code. Officials must recognize that anything that they do that may lead to a conflict of interest, whether real or apparent, is something that they need to avoid. Real or apparent. Be very careful in how you are conducting yourself. When the facts come out, it may be absolutely clear that there was no conflict of interest. But people could perceive it. I have learned that the kid that I have known for 10 years, who is now on the front line of a Cat 1 race, and there's a bunch of money on the line, I am not going to walk up to him at the start line and shake his hand. I'm not going to do it after the race, except if we're out of sight of others. It's like, good job. Because somebody might look at that, especially if there was a contested sprint, and that rider won. Is there a conflict of interest? People would possibly think so. So think about what you do and how you do it as to how it can be perceived by others. It's not really fun, but perception becomes reality when you're an official out there. The receiving of gifts, favors, special treatment, privileges, employment, any other things regarding the people you're dealing with out there, which can compromise or lead to the perception that you are being impartial, you need to be very careful of. Try to avoid that whenever possible. Your boss's wife is doing something wrong during a bike race. You need to penalize her. Well, you got to do it. Just do it in a way that's hopefully not going to get you fired at work. That wasn't really a hypothetical, by the way. Some of you may know. The code, Article 3. In your interactions with other officials, treat them with professional courtesy and dignity, and recognize that it is always inappropriate to criticize other officials in public. Always. Even though you may absolutely know that that was a very horrible thing that they did, do not criticize them in public. You do so in private. Praise in public, criticize in private. You want to develop a crew, you develop that mantra, and you are going to have people that are going to be willing to listen to you when you give them a hard message. Public disagreements or arguments between officials creates an atmosphere that is not conducive to the good management of a cycling event. It looks unprofessional. It is unprofessional. So do not have public arguments, especially when it's like, who's somebody I can... Steve Stone makes a decision out on the course. I'm looking and go, Steve, could we possibly chat about that real quickly? And Steve's like, but that was the call. And it's like, we can reverse that and it might be a good idea, and here's why. And Steve feels very strongly about it. I feel strongly about it. But we can do it in a way that's like, so, how you doing? It's like, by the way, I really disagree with you. Make it that anybody who's watching the interaction is seeing a good working relationship and they are not hearing an argument. Work with each other on this. The code, Article 4. So continuously seek self-improvement through study, especially of the sport, its rules, proper mechanics. And by the way, mechanics is the how you do the thing. Where are you going to position yourself to look at a finish, no matter what your sport is, whether it's mountain bike or BMX or track, where should you be standing? That is the mechanics. Accurately represent your qualifications and abilities when requesting or accepting officiating assignments. And do not make false or misleading statements regarding your qualifications, your rating, experience, training, or competence. Recently, there's an upcoming Motor A course, and attendees, prospective attendees, need to get letters of recommendation from certain people. And I had somebody that sent me their race resume that had some interesting experiences on it, especially considering that I had been at the race and they weren't, and yet here they are in a very good position on their race resume. So don't do that. That person's not attending the Motor A course. The code, Article 5, on all occasions and to the best of your ability, serve the interests of cycling. It's kind of a broad term. Think about it as to, if you have the opportunity, do the good things that you can for the sport. When people are hammering away on a particular thing that might be in the press a lot recently, do what you can to have people say, yes, but this is a great sport. And when you look at who we are here because this is a great sport. We have been involved with it. I mean, how many, is there 1,000+ years of experience with the sport in this room? So continue to serve those best interests of our sport. Be aware of your personal responsibility and take necessary actions to carry it out. And do your part to eliminate any practice or conduct by yourself or others that is going to bring discredit to the profession of officiating. Please. And the final article is Article 6. Do not abuse your position of authority. Maintain a high ethical standard. There are some people that the moment they put that shirt on, it becomes not necessarily a great situation. There's others, when they put that shirt on, they become bigger than themselves, and it's a wonderful thing to watch. I've seen some very quiet, meek people just blossom and become absolutely wonderful as officials. Do not be party to any action designed to unfairly limit or restrain access to officiating opportunities or assignments. If you are the local assigner in your area, do everything you can to make sure that the assignments are being appropriately distributed amongst the qualified candidates. That does not mean that just because you are an official that you are going to get an assignment. Make sure, though, that you have very good reasons as to why you are assigning the people you are and why you are not assigning the people you are. So notes in regard to the code. As may be necessary, USAC will, and the National Technical Commission, will publish additional policies and clarifying information regarding the code of conduct, the code of ethics. And this last bullet is understand that violations of this code of ethics could lead to discipline. Operative word being could. And I'll be discussing that later in the discipline section of the code of ethics. In the discipline section. That finishes just the third of my presentation on the code of ethics. Any questions thus far regarding just the code of ethics?
Will the code of ethics also go to, like you mentioned, race directors? Are you going to go into any of that, besides just how they are for the officials?
So the question for those that will be watching this later, the question was, is the code of ethics going to be for race directors and possibly others, or is it just for officials? Is that accurate? Right now, this code of ethics only applies to officials. We have a higher, hang on, just let's wait for the microphone. So we have Micah back here.
I'm just going to say that I can confirm that we're working on the same path, on a parallel path, code of ethics for all levels of members, including race directors, coaches, mechanics, all people that are licensed by USA Cycling. And this is a great start and a good group to lay this one out. But I can confirm that we're working on, and they're all slightly tweaked for different job duties within the membership.
Thank you, Micah. Thank you for asking the question. Any other questions? We're the guinea pigs for USA Cycling. So no further questions on the code of ethics. I will move on to the next part of the presentation, which is social media guidelines. You guys feel free to tweet about the presentation right now. Feel free to post on Facebook. Let's make sure that we understand the terminology here. So social media technologies, what is social media? It takes many different forms. So it includes magazines, forums, blogs, microblogging, which is Twitter, wikis, social networks, podcasts, photographs, pictures, video, rating and social bookmarking sites. That's all social media. This is where, as the public, they're putting some information out that is consumable by the public. And in many cases, by a much smaller group that is somewhat controlled, and in other cases, even smaller, just one-to-one communication, because it can become public. So common examples are Wikipedia, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Google Groups. Less common examples, and something which I'm sure might be a little bit disturbing to some of you, private emails, instant messages, which were later made public. If you're putting something into an electronic communication, it is permanent, and it very likely could become public. So the social media guidelines, the background for it, they have been created as a result of a working group of the National Technical Commission. It was worked on for the past several months, and it was finally voted on and approved by the TC during its meeting this week. These are guidelines. These are not hard and fast rules. This area of our lives is changing too quickly for us to make this hard and fast rules. But just like the Code of Ethics, these are things that use as guides. It's going to be changing out there. Use this to help remind yourselves to think carefully about communicating via social media. This was created, I'm not sure if it was at a particular request, but it was definitely as a result of some situations that we have faced across the realm of officiating here in the United States. We have officials that wear multiple hats, whether they're an official, a writer, a local association rep, or a race director, or who knows what other roles. Communications are put out. In one role, it's read by somebody who knows that person in another role, and they consider that they are speaking on behalf of that other role. And when you get that message in the other role, when you read about it that way, it sounds like a very inappropriate message. But if you knew the original context in which it was given, it'd be a very appropriate message. Saying, "I thought Jane Doe rode unfairly today," can be construed completely differently if you're an official, if you're a rider that was in the race, if you're the LA representative, or if you're the race director. Any one of those roles would have a completely different take as to how people would understand what your message was. So if you are going to, I'm going to give you some practical advice here. If you are going to put a message out there that you think could be misconstrued, and by the way, just about everything you say can be misconstrued, try to put the caveat in there, I am saying this in my role as a rider who was in this race. I thought Jane Doe rode unfairly today. Just be straight up about it. If somebody takes that and plugs it someplace, Todd Manning thought Jane Doe rode unfairly today. Why I'd be riding against Jane Doe, I'm not sure. And Todd Manning, in his role as a rider, stated, as a rider in the race, I thought she rode unfairly today. People could take that as it is, rather than Todd Manning, the official, or Todd Manning, the guy who works with the Washington State Bicycle Association, thought so. Completely different messages. So try to put that in front of your statements. Consider that all social media communications are public, even those that have been created with private intentions. To the casual observer, operative word being the casual, to the casual observer, you represent USAC, your local association, and other officials. Please act accordingly. You are an ambassador for officiating and for the sport of cycling. Hopefully, you will conduct yourself and promote both in a positive and professional manner. In your role as an official, you have access to information that is not public. You need to be careful as to what part of that information you communicate, how you communicate it, and to whom you communicate it. And especially when it's really juicy information. It's really good information. You know why this world champion just got relegated from first place in a sprint. You know all about it. And yet there was some things that happened in the race jury, and so this statement goes out. You know there was a lot more to it than that statement, but you can't talk about it. The only people you are going to be able to talk to about that, the only people, are going to be the other people that were on that race jury that you were a part of. You can't even come into this room and talk about it. Okay? So think about how you are going to be doing these things in the future. It is inappropriate to engage in public discussions of a specific play or ruling, whether it is an event you worked or one that you witnessed. Taking that last example, if you can take it and strip out enough of the details that it's like, yes, I had somebody that sprinted for a win, they did the following action, and we were trying to figure out the relegation, and we ended up just relegating them back 3 places. That could be a local Category D race, or it could have been some very major race in the United States. But talk about that for the purposes of learning why was the relegation made, why was the call made the way that it was. But try to strip out enough of the details. Communications for learning purposes amongst officials should be done privately and not through the use of open social media. Remember that private communications can and often are made public, whether accidentally or intentionally, and are often made out of context. We have a wonderful officials group on Google. We have some great discussions that are on there. Be careful as to what you write on there, because somebody could take that and post it someplace else. But that is a great learning tool. Use it a lot to present situations. Ideally, you're going to strip out enough so people aren't going to figure out, oh, that was Todd Manning that did that screwy thing. Try to have it be that people are going to learn from the discussion without it being a bad thing for the people involved. Be very sparing in the sharing of your own personal information, including photos, and adjust your security settings on your various social media sites appropriately for the audiences that you want to have access to that information. The higher up you go in this sport, in this profession, the more scrutiny you are going to get, not only from others who are officials, but from others who are outside of this room, whether it be writers, media, team managers. They are going to be looking. So be cautious. And that ends my presentation on the social media guidelines. Any questions on social media? Should be fairly straightforward. Let's wait for a microphone here.
Do the guidelines address using social media while a race is going on? Something I personally don't want to see happen ever at my races, but it does happen.
The social media guidelines do not address that specifically. I would say that, so I have seen it. I've seen situations where we have radio tours sitting in the back of the car, tweeting information that is not public. As far as I'm concerned, if there's an official who is doing anything on social media during a race, they are not doing their job as an official. That means they are not paying attention. I don't care how boring that 18 hours of criteriums is. Do not be posting, here's the current situation. Unless you have been specifically tasked with doing that by your chief referee for media purposes. So we're only in 2013. I could easily see the time when we are going to be doing live feeds as to, like, here's exactly what's going on. It's going to be into the bicycle press. But we're not there yet. Great question, Tom. Thank you. And there was another question over here before, while you're right there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to point out that the officials forum is a moderated forum, and we, are certainly not perfect about it, but we try to watch that. I'm one of the moderators, and we try to watch that sort of thing to make sure that we keep things not specific. And it's important because even though it's a private forum for officials, it is open to anyone who has an official license, and it's it's that kind of halfway in between social media.
That's a very good thing to know. Do you happen to, as one of the moderators of the site, do you happen to go back to the person who submitted it and say, hey, we have stripped out the following details?
Ask them to resubmit. We would just say no to the post and have it be resubmitted. We don't edit posts.
So for those on TV later, what they'll do is they'll reject the post, ask them to resubmit it without the details. Thank you.
Todd, I guess the question I have is, if you have questions or concerns, say about a race before or after, and you want to talk to another official, from what you're saying is call them on the phone or talk to them in person, but don't send them an email? If you're worried about it someone else getting a hold of what your concerns are?
I'm not going to go that far, but I am going to urge you to be cautious in the wording that you use if you put it in an email. I much prefer to do things in person first, by phone second, and then in email. Email, you can understand the nuances of things that are being said back to you. I recently had somebody contact me and ask me about a certain individual, and the person who contacted me, I didn't know well enough, and I just said, that person is doing okay. Once I got a chance to meet that person in live, I was able to give a few more details, but I wasn't going to put those details in writing. So be circumspect. Long time ago, I learned, think twice before speaking once. And when it comes to writing something, email, I think, is one of the most horrible forums for making sure that you are getting your intent across. So I'm going to say think 3 times before hitting that send button or that post button. I cannot tell you how many times that I have sent something and I read it later and was like, ooh, I didn't mean it to sound like that, but it did. And if you do that, back to take responsibility for your actions, go post a follow-up and go, whoa, that sounded way too harsh, or no, that isn't exactly how I meant it to be. I just read it again, or somebody contacted me and said, is that what you meant? Go back and accept responsibility that you may not have communicated that as well as you would have liked, and fix it. So be cautious. And thank you for asking.
Todd, I think it's important to emphasize that these social media guidelines need to apply to officials who may not be on the crew, but may be serving as moto marshals with GoPro cameras on their helmets and posting, video of the road race on their Facebook pages, or commenting on the way team cars drive, or whatever the case may be. They're moto marshals for that particular event, but I see it happen all the time. And so they're not on the officiating crew, but they are officials who are serving in a different capacity.
And you have just gone thoroughly into the realm of where this gets hard to administer. So taking video, making posts, you weren't part of the crew, you just happen to have access, and it's not because you were an official, it's just because you happen to be out there. Remember the code of ethics? It applies to you as an official whether or not you are on the crew. The code of ethics and other policies that are here, they flow through to being responsibilities for you as an official, whether or not you are on the crew. Be thoughtful about whether you are going to post something, what is the intent of showing it and posting it. The last thing we need to do is to have somebody who has a great setup, they have great video, and it shows this situation that the officials all looked at. They looked at the video and they're like, oh God, well, we're going to make the call this way based on additional information. And the one video goes out from that official and it makes the rest of the officiating crew look bad, but it wasn't the complete story. I don't know, how deep is the ocean? how high is the sky? You've got to be thinking about, what you want to do here. And the communications that you're going to have to your fellow officials when you take this kind of messaging back into your local areas is be thoughtful. And rather than making rigid rules that we can come down hard on somebody, this stuff moves around too fast. We need to have people thinking about what's the right thing. And we need to have, as senior officials, we need to be able to manage perceptions, manage others in a way that is going to have them learn from the opportunity that was presented by doing something like that. Great line I heard many years ago when somebody, a manager was, we were doing reviews of some people, and this manager said, well, he has many opportunities to improve. It wasn't like he's horrible, it's just he has many opportunities. So take that opportunity as a senior official in your area to chat with some people about how they think about what they post in social media. All right? Any other questions on social media? None? Now I get to move on to the discipline policy as to officials. Now what I'm trying to figure out, I didn't volunteer for any of these. I think Sean just didn't want to have to present this. And I think I wasn't really paying attention when they asked for volunteers. I might have been doing something else when I realized, wait a minute, everybody else stepped back. So with that, I am going to talk about the discipline policy as it currently exists today with USA Cycling and as specifically when it comes to officials. This is not meant to be anything but positive. It's meant that way. Some of the messages are going to come across that you're going to be going, wait a minute, I thought you said positive. I do mean it that way. So as you are listening and watching this, please understand that everything that I'm about to talk about is meant to be for the betterment of officiating as a whole, and for us, in some cases, as individual officials. So please listen with that filter on. So this presentation is based on the current USAC Policy 3, Grievances and Discipline, Part 4, Sections 14 through 24. Are your eyes glazing over yet? As currently adopted, and it's going to focus on Section 22, malfeasance and misfeasance by an official. There are discussions underway between USAC staff and the TC as to current disciplinary processes involving officials, with the goal being to improve the quality of officiating across the nation. Additional information will be provided to all of the officials as it becomes available. With that, let's get started. So the process of complaints, for all complaints right now, as far as I understand, unless there's some other little thing, they go through Sean Farrell and he handles them. Things get filtered out, that's the initial triage point, then there's investigations, and some and others there goes to hearings and things like that. Policy 3, Sections 2 through 8 outline all of the procedures and processes that take place for processing complaints. This is the due process section of the policy. I urge you to read this section, whether it be that you know someone that is being dealt with from disciplinary context, whether it be a writer, team manager, or an official. Know what the due process is. Note that complaints arising based on application or interpretation of rules, penalties, or other issues at a race that could have been raised by that complainant to the CR or to the CJ are specifically excluded under the policy. So people can file the complaint. I don't like the call that you just made at this race, I'm going to send a note to, hopefully not, but somebody will decide they're going to send it to Steve Johnson and to the president of the board of directors of USA Cycling. That will flow down to Sean. Sean's going to look at it, and he's going to call up and go, Todd, did you really relegate that rider for cussing out the mayor's wife? I said, yes, I did. Good. Thank you very much. Done. Now, a complaint was filed. It went all the way up, came all the way back down, got to me. They checked on it, and it's like, there's nothing here. It's like, I would have done the same thing. Probably every one of you would have done the same thing. So you will, if you haven't had a complaint filed about you, just wait, you will. The thing which you want to avoid is having a valid complaint filed about you, one that will lead to being dealt with under these disciplinary processes. So under Policy 3, Part 4, Member Discipline, all members, all licensees of USAC are subject to disciplinary action, including officials, for violation of USA Cycling regulations, rules, policies, code of conduct, and acts of malfeasance. And here's the kicker. This is the bucket. We don't like something you did because it really reflects poorly on USA Cycling. Or other actions to the prejudice of USA Cycling or the sport of bicycle racing. Yeah. Fortunately, we have some people that are involved in the disciplinary process that are very thoughtful about this, and they are not on witch hunts. They are not out to punish officials or riders or race directors, and that is a buffer between tyranny and justice. How's that? You'll notice I couldn't put that in writing, but oh, damn, it's on film now. And there are some knowing nods in the room. And with that, I move on. So officials, coaches, and mechanics are a special group. Officials, coaches, and mechanics have a higher duty of responsibility to the people that they are around. If they are indicted or charged with certain criminal acts, their licenses will be suspended until that particular incident has been resolved in their favor, and not until then. And you can go take a look at that in sections 21 et sec. A little Latin there for you. I don't know what the heck it means, but I got to learn it, so I got to use it. Part 4 is section 22. This is where there's a section of the discipline policy that is specific to officials. This policy has been in place for about 1.5 years, 2 years now. I want to make sure that we understand it. So malfeasance is defined in section 10.1 or something like that of the policy. But when it comes to the official section, that other malfeasance is brought in, and the additional language includes demonstrable incompetence as an official. So malfeasance. Any conduct, I'm going to read this because I want you to get it. Any conduct, whether by acts or omissions, either I did it or didn't, where under the circumstances were of a nature to bring discredit upon USAC or was to the prejudice of USAC, even if those acts or omissions were not specifically prohibited or required. So don't be that person who did something and says, but there's nothing written here that says I can't do that. Well, yeah, you're right. But do you want me to put 5 other officials out here and ask them if they thought that was okay? Hopefully we're going to get 5 other officials before this comes to malfeasance. Hopefully we're going to get 5 other officials that are going to go, what were you thinking? If we get 3 other officials go, well, I don't know. That's not going to rise to malfeasance. The includes demonstrable incompetence as an official. That's a pretty high standard. You have screwed up badly. And everybody's looking at it and it's like, I don't want that person on my crew. Race directors are calling local assigners and saying, please do not assign that official to my crew ever again. That starts raising lots of red flags, and we need to do something about that. So complaints of malfeasance are processed the same way as any other complaint. The due process kicks in between the sections 2 through 8. It will go to Sean Farrell. An investigator will be assigned. The investigator will look into it and will come back with a recommendation that there was nothing here, or there was, and here's what I found, and a recommendation on punishment. And then there's all of the other process, whether you want a hearing and all these other things that can go forward. Misfeasance, it's a lesser standard than malfeasance. This was put in place, to the best of my knowledge, and somebody may need to correct me if I step too far out of line, is we wanted to be able to deal with officials that were in situations that it's like, that's perfectly within the rules, but we really do need to think about how that official approached that particular situation. We want to talk to that official, or that official could use some coaching. This is solidly in the discipline policy. But this is not, we're going to kill this official. This is, we need to work with this official and help make them better, help rehabilitate them. So this is conduct not amounting to malfeasance, the higher standard, but which calls into question the official's ability to perform their duties effectively, including pattern of poor judgment, erroneous decisions, erroneous interpretations of the racing rules, and a pattern of poor performance. A clearly erroneous decision materially affecting the outcome of a race is solidly in this. So be careful on those decisions. I'm not saying, second guess yourself before you make the decision. If you know that's the call I need to make it and go. Go with confidence because you have prepared yourself. You know what the rules are. You have prepared yourself for that event, for that position. As well as, so other misfeasance is any other unacceptable conduct as an official that doesn't rise to the level of malfeasance. Once again, there's another little overflow bucket for things. So in misfeasance, the way things are processed is an investigator is not assigned. Well, somebody files a complaint, works its way through whatever path to Sean Farrell. Sean takes a look at it and says, this isn't malfeasance. It's not a violation of any of the rules of discipline that apply to all members where we need to discipline this person, but it does represent misfeasance. Sean can then appoint a peer review committee. Some of us are starting to call it a PRC. We're trying to work our language on this. So the PRC is appointed by the CEO through Sean. It can also be requested by the National Technical Commission. It can be requested by a regional technical commission. And if someone has a score of 2.5 or lower on an evaluation that was done by a national evaluator, that person could also be subject to a PRC. And once again, this is all with the idea we want to rehabilitate this particular official. That's the goal of this. Members of the PRC, there will be one member from the National Technical Commission, and there will be two other people who will be at the same rank or higher than the person who is subject to the particular complaint of misfeasance. So the PRC gets involved, they've been assigned, they start investigating. As a result of their investigating, they find that the complaint is without merit. They've gone and talked to witnesses. There's nothing here. They put it in writing, send it back to the CEO through Sean. There's nothing. Peer review committee is dismissed. There is no action taken. There's no discipline. And it will be as if no such action, no such peer review committee was ever appointed. That's the statement here. However, if the peer review committee looks at it and says, well, there is something here. The peer review committee can take a look at this and figure out, here's what we need to do with this particular official to have it be that ideally they aren't going to repeat this, either this pattern of behavior or the erroneous decisions or just the way that they are doing things to make them better. The peer review committee will work with that official to help bring them back to where we want all officials to be as a level of competence and professionalism. And that is going to be done via counseling and mentoring. Maybe some other plans as to like, here's what we'd like you to do, here's some classes we'd like you to take, here's some particular experience that we would like you to go out and get, whether it be at a particular bike race or whether it be someplace else. When the PRC believes that the official has been rehabilitated, it shall notify the CEO, the PRC will be resolved, and the whole matter will be done. But that PRC will remain on that official's record, as far as I understand. Might be wrong on that. I hope I'm wrong on that. If the PRC determines that counseling or mentoring of that official is going to be insufficient to resolve the particular problem, they may recommend discipline be taken against that particular official, and they will make a recommendation as to what that discipline will consist of, and they will submit that to the CEO, through Sean. And the CEO can institute that discipline or something lesser, but not something more. Here's the gradated list of penalties for officials for malfeasance or misfeasance. So a letter of concern, a written reprimand, removal from national assignment eligibility, downgrading in rank, suspension for a defined period of time, possibly a lifetime suspension. In addition to any of those, except for the lifetime ban on officiating, I think, because you wouldn't be a licensee anymore. Well, you might still be a licensee as a writer or something else, but not as an official. But we may require you to take classes or something to help figure out what needs to be done to get you better or to rehabilitate the particular issue. Again, this is all about getting that official back to being a good official unless it is determined we are wasting our time. And that's a hard message to deliver. That's a really hard message to deliver to somebody who thinks that this is a sport that they love. They have put a lot of time into becoming an official. They have become competent to a certain level. And there's something that just isn't working for them as an official. Sometimes we've got to say, for the betterment of all officials, for the betterment of the sport, for the safety of the riders, for the protection of USA Cycling, for the protection of the race directors, we're going to need to cut you loose. Boy, howdy, I don't want to be that guy making that message, but sometimes we're going to have to. So note that progressive discipline is not required. So what should I know and what should I do? First of all, do your best to be a good, kind, honest person while you are doing your job as an official. Be open to constructive feedback. Keep learning. Do all of that, keeping a good attitude, and it is very unlikely that you will ever be faced with a credible complaint against you. Know the rules, the policies, the guidelines that apply to all USA Cycling members, and especially those that apply just to officials. For example, the official social media guidelines, the code of ethics. That is not an exhaustive list. Go read the stuff that's out there. It's all posted online, except for the social media guidelines, which will be posted soon. Except for the social media guidelines, which will be presented in some format to be determined by Tom Mahoney and staff. If you become involved in a peer review committee or any other disciplinary matter, I want you to do one thing first. Demand from USA Cycling that it follow its own stated rules regarding due process. Go read that section. Demand that due process be followed. Once that due process has been followed, this is not a court of law. Start cooperating. Cooperate with the people that are doing the peer review committee. Cooperate with the investigator. Do not be combative, because if you are being combative, it is probably one of the things that constituted why you are there in the first place. Cooperate. The people that are involved want to see you succeed. They want to see you be successful as an official. They are not your enemy, and they are not paid anything other than a tiny little stipend that you would make far more by going to a time trial. They are putting a lot of their own personal time and energy into this to help you as an official. So if you get involved, cooperate and try to get the message that is going to be delivered to you, and it may be a very hard message. And hopefully it's a message that will have been communicated to you in the past, but you may not have heard it. This is one of those things that there is nothing that will focus your attention like looking at something that is like, this is the end of my officiating career if I don't participate in this. And for people like Steve Stone, there were other things that I'm sure focused his attention much better. But that was a previous life. So with that, let me go to any questions regarding the discipline policy. Mr. Mahoney, do you have a microphone there?
I can remember it. Can you define lifetime ban? Is it truly lifetime, or is it a defined number of years?
So the question for those on the that are watching this is, could I define a lifetime ban? Is it truly a lifetime, or is it a term of years? It's like the lifetime warranty on certain products. It might be the product itself, might be the person that was issuing it, but usually it's going to be, I'm sorry, I was being a little bit trite there, and I don't mean to be on this topic. It is going to be for the life of that official, unless and until they do something that is going to convince staff and probably some members of the PRC that were with them that there is another option and that maybe they should be given another chance. Nobody likes to see lifetime ban. I mean, that's just a horrible thing. But in some cases, maybe it's the right thing to do. But that is a very, very dangerous, sharp thing for us to be doing with a sport that we love. But we want to protect the sport. All right? Other questions? And thank you for asking it.
Todd, that was an excellent presentation. I would like to bring forth one point that you didn't mention, and that is that the PRC members will maintain utter confidentiality, even of their existence, and it's not discussed. And the subset of people outside of the PRC who know that a PRC is taking place is extremely small. Obviously, it includes a few key members of staff and probably a few key members of the National Technical Commission. But the identity of those who are subject to a peer review committee is confidential. And like an evaluation, the subject of the review is at liberty to discuss it with anyone they want, but the members of the peer review committee itself will not confirm or deny its existence or discuss it with anyone generally or even specifically, with their friends, with other officials, et cetera.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Randy?
One point I'd like to make is that when we have these kind of policies, people become a little bit nervous. So I'm going to just share a motto that I learned a few years ago. So if somebody comes up to you and tells you that you're a mule, and you can translate into the 3-letter acronym if you need, that's information for you. Maybe you acted in a certain way and that particular person gave you information. However, if 40 people give you that same information, maybe it's time for a saddle. In other words, if you're getting consistent information from a lot of people in your peer group, you are likely headed towards this, especially if you're not heeding it. So we really have to remember that at every level of officiating, whether it's your local crew, your local association, your regional group, et cetera, we all hold accountability for the conduct of other people that are working with us. We need to convey honestly what we see, and we need to convey quickly and timely information to them so that they can actually avoid that. If you get beyond that point, then you may be likely headed here. But this is not a norm by any means. And quite honestly, this policy has been worked on extensively for the protection of officials. So if you look at this as anything other than first and immediately the protection of officials and their, especially their due rights, because they do have increased membership responsibilities, then you may be actually headed towards this as well. So you need to understand this is about protection, and this is about making sure that we all do a good job and keep a very positive and professional image out there.
Thank you, Randy.
If you're under the peer review, will you be notified?
Yes. So, well, hang on. So, Frank just asked a great question. If you're under a peer review, will you be notified? Because there are people that have thought, what's going on? I'm not getting particular assignments, or I'm getting shunned by somebody or a group of people. If you're under a PRC, remember the due process, there's going to be notice, it's going to have been served on you, you have an opportunity to respond. All of that has to take place before that PRC is going to go forward. So, Sean, I'm still in my question and answer period. Do you have a question?
I have a comment.
Okay, go for it, Sean.
All right.
I was going to say Tom was next.
Well, he can wait.
This is my...
I'll stay on this side.
All right, you stay over there.
Okay. No, I just wanted to say, and part of this, Todd brings up a really good point. Why did we do all this? One of the main reasons is, in the past, there really were two things that happened to officials that maybe we thought were underperforming. One is, it got so bad that they broke an actual regulation of USA Cycling, and their first time they knew they had a problem, they were looking at a suspension. Okay, well, that's just unconscionable, because we don't think that anybody suddenly went from being a great official to being the worst official on the planet and deserves to be suspended. Clearly, there should have been signs along the way that we had issues, but we didn't have anything to address that. So the other thing that happened was what Frank was really alluding to, the double secret probation. We keep not getting assignments, what's going on, and no one will tell you why, and really you don't want to open up that can of worms because you don't have any policies in place to back you up. So what would happen is you just keep not getting assigned and not getting assigned, and you're getting frustrated because you're never getting the assignments that you think you deserve, but no one's telling you why you're not getting them. this whole process is supposed to kind of bridge that gap to, if there are issues, we get them out there and let everybody know. It's only fair that if I think I ought to be working this race and I can't get the assignment, someone will tell me why. And then I have a chance to do something about it. And so that's why we started this. So, I mean, when you first look at it, yeah, it's kind of scary and it's not a very positive message, but considering the alternative, if you're serious about your officiating career, it is a positive message. We now have policies in place. And I think you have somewhere in there that the whole PRC concept can also be initiated by the official. So, I mean, the official has the right themselves to request a PRC. And there might be situations where they would want to do that. We've had a couple already. But this is a fairly new process, and someone asked a question about lifetime ban. We haven't done any lifetime bans under this process yet. Since I've been here 10 years now, I think we have lifetime banned 3 officials. And but it was prior to any of this happening. So, and it had gotten pretty bad by the time we got to that point. But just wanted to bring that up. That's a little of the background of why this was necessary.
Thank you, Sean.
And I'll always follow Sean. So some of the nice things about how this has been set up is, what happens oftentimes, people who don't understand what life of an official is like and all the pressures we're under, try to second guess us. This peer review is of people like you who know exactly what it's to be in that situation, how easy it is to be misinterpreted. So a lot of things can get clarified on your behalf because these people who are your peers are going to be looking at the same situation going, yeah, I know how that can come up. And it clarifies what really is an issue and what is not. The second part, this is a nice way of actually having mentors from other parts of the country. You know what? For example, let's say I start barraging the leader of a bike race, and I keep doing it. The team's going to be complaining to a lot of different people here, and Sean's going to go, yeah, I know Tom does that. What am I going to do with him? So I'm going to get a peer review committee of a bunch of international commissaires who, I'm going to be social networking him during the bike racing. Should I barrage this guy? But at least I have someone to bounce off of so that, for whatever reason I wasn't getting it, I wasn't recognizing who the leader of the race was, and I have other redeeming characteristics why they don't want to bounce me out of the sport, and I have an opportunity to be able to learn and grow in a structured environment. And I think that's the way this should be really taken by a lot of people.
Thank you, Tom. Dot?
It was brought up that a lot of this seems intimidating, and I know evaluations are intimidating to a lot of people to begin with. The fact that you now have a 2.5 on an evaluation could lead to a PRC. I think that should also be taken in a very positive light, like Tom was just mentioning, that's just a flag that you've got a weakness in an area, and if you're assigned a PRC, the way I'm seeing this anyway, is that committee then will help you work through those issues and make you better.
Exactly. Thank you, Dot.
Doing wind sprints today, it's great.
So what is the recommended process if as officials we recognize that there is a fellow official who could benefit from a PRC who perhaps isn't getting assigned where they'll get the 2.5 or below? Is it appropriate for us to file something, or should that go through the RTC for the RTC to file, or what would you recommend?
First of all, I love the way you asked the question about to help a fellow official. That's absolutely the goal. And what you should do is submit this to the RTC if it's appropriate. So take a look at who the members of your RTC are. If the person you're going to be submitting it about is on the RTC, it'd be better to go directly to the NTC members in your area or to Sean Farrell. Okay? I promise you that the NTC takes this very seriously and is going to do everything they can to make sure that the right thing is getting done for the particular official and for the sport. Thank you for asking that. Anyone else? Folks, thank you very much for your time. It was my honor.